I am Darlene Garcia. I am I am actually an advanced certified grief recovery specialist, but I wear other hats too. I am a self-love coach. That's another part of my own personal journey that I found so much transformation that I couldn't help but share that with the world to help a lot of people. It's realizing that self-love is a huge deficiency out there with a lot of human beings. And then I'm a professional speaker. I'm a widow, been one for 5 years. I'm a grandmother and a mom. And I love, being that person that inspires hope and light and love back into people's life, because those are the three things that I lost in an instant when Frank died. And trying to find it again was the most difficult thing for me. And the grief recovery method in 2.5 days showed me that it was possible. When Frank died, I was actually working in human resources. So I was a human resources manager at the time that he died. And I was actually the administrator of our bereavement program. And so in our company that I worked for, it was anywhere from 3 to 5 days, depending on the work group that you were with. And I was a stickler to that black and white policy. And if people didn't have, additional time off, paid banks, for example, like a vacation bank or a sick bank. And even at that, sometimes I think some of our policies didn't even allow you to use your sick bank, because losing a loved one is not a health condition. And so it didn't fall within the parameters of that, of that program. And, so I always looked at it from a black and white perspective and never looked at it from a human, emotional, supportive perspective. And when I lost my husband, I was very fortunate that I had a lot of paid leave that I could dip into that was within my parameters of using the paid leave. But I realized almost immediately how wrong I had been when I was helping other employees that had lost loved ones before I lost my loved one. So now I was them. Now I became the employee who ran out of time and had to return to work. And I was out of work for 3 months. That's how much leave I had in order for me to take, to be paid. And then once that ran out, I now was forced to go back to the office. And even after 3 months, I wasn't ready, right? So you ask the question, what is the right time? And I will tell you, from an HR perspective and from a grief recovery perspective and from a griever perspective, there's no right answer, right? Some people are going to want to come back to work right away for their own reasons. I can't stay home and think about this because it's making me feel worse. I need to be around people. So coming to work is going to help me. Others like myself, who was like, I can't be around people. No one understands what I'm going through, and I just need to be alone, and I need to deal with this by myself. And I'm not ready. I'm not ready to dive in. I don't even know if I know how to do my job anymore. And so being flexible with your employees, and I get it, there's an operation that needs to be run, right? There are still, I guess, boundaries that we need to put around in order for our operation to thrive. But I think that what employers, HR professionals, leaders are missing is that they're putting that piece first before the human in their organization. Because one of the things that I realize is that if you take care of your employees and you're there for them in this moment of crisis, however that looks for them, and whatever you can do to support them, they will come back a better, more loyal and committed employee. I can promise you that. And so, just looking back on my journey into being the griever and not the HR professional, my employer was there for me for the first 3 months. And you know why? Because I was out of sight, out of mind. They didn't have to deal with my human emotions. They never saw what I was going through. So Dar's gone. She's gone taking care of her grief. And when she comes back, she'll be good. She's ready. She's ready to train. She's ready to go out and do, union negotiations. She's ready to go out and face her business partners and help them with whatever they need, hiring, firing, whatever it is, right? Whatever my job role was back then, she's going to be ready because she took off 90 days. That's more than enough time to take off for grief. But Robin, when I went to work that first day, I felt like a new employee. And I'd been with this company for over 20 years. I walked into that office feeling like a stranger. I looked at my coworkers, my heart was pounding because I didn't know how to react. I didn't want to cry, but I felt like crying. I was scared to be there because I didn't know what people were going to say to me. And if they said the wrong things, would I get upset or whatever? I didn't know how I was going to react. I was thankful that I had my own office, but I was also scared to be in the office by myself. So it was like, I didn't want to be by myself, but I did. I was so confused, like so many conflicting feelings. I walked in there, the silence was deafening. So I had to turn up the music, and then the music distracted me. I turned on my computer. I didn't know where to begin. I had all these emails in there. I was overwhelmed. Where do I start? I was gone for 3 months. Who do I answer first? And what do I say? And so without having a return to work program in place to help guide me through, and no one knowing how to help me, and they figured she knows how to help herself best, everyone left me alone and just said, let us know what you need. I don't know what I need.
Right.
I need to go home, but I can't afford to go home.
Right.
And so that right there led me to this revelation that, again, we don't know what we don't know. So as an HR professional who still is so passionate about the human resources organizations out there, I knew that I needed to do something.
Yes.
Being an HR professional, being a leader, and being a griever all at the same time, I now was able to see all sides of the spectrum. And so bereavement policies, they only work for as long as they work, which means that they're only good for 3 to 5 days if that's all you're giving me. But what happens after that? The true transformation and the true commitment and loyalty that you're going to get from your employees is when they return. Because what I mentioned before, out of sight, out of mind, your employer, your coworkers have no idea what you're going through in those moments that you're at home. But once you come back to work, everyone's walking on eggshells. So, she's back. What do we say to her? Is she still grieving? Is she still crying? Do we talk about Frank? Do we not talk about Frank? Do we give her more work so that she is keeping herself busy? Do we take some of that work away from her? Like, there was even on their side, I felt bad because they were also wanting to help me and they didn't know how, right? And so this return to work program that I have developed to help organizations is really something that I'm so passionate about because it now brings something into the organizations that is different from anything that I think organizations have ever seen. It can go hand in hand with a bereavement program because, again, everyone has to have their boundaries, right? At the end of the day, the show must go on. Operations still got to run. So I'm not saying we're going to give you whatever time off you need. Employee A, you only need 5 days. Cool. Employee B, you need 20 days. Okay, awesome. Employee C, you need 3 months. Okay, cool. It doesn't work that way, right? So you still have to have those leave programs in place so that your operation can run. It's coming back to work. That's where really the magic happens for these employees and the employer, the leader and the coworkers to shine as well. Right?
Absolutely. And how can they? What can they do? What can coworkers and leaders do to support those who are grieving as they return to work? What can they do?
Right. And so that is what I love about what I'm teaching organizations is because, the first thing is coming in and talking to them and letting them know that grief is very is very present in the workplace, whether you guys want to admit it or not. If you have a human being working in your organization, someone is grieving at every given time, right? And so we just need to be able to recognize who they are and what are those signs, and is it affecting performance. And so just having that awareness, that's the first one. Having the awareness that this is happening in the workplace, and then developing programs so that you can get people trained to be able to help those people coming back in. And it's not your technical training that you're going to, have this cheat sheet over here on the side and go, okay, I checked off, I asked her this question, I asked her this question, I asked her this question. It all comes from the heart, right? So teaching people about compassion. And so first teaching them about grief. And so everyone understands that we're all grievers. And then when they understand grief, the way we do as grievers understand grief, then I teach them about compassion and how to have compassion, not only for your coworkers that are coming back, but have compassion for yourself. Because that's one of the things that as human beings, a lot of us, we forget about ourselves, because we always want to help others. And those that are givers out there sometimes have a burnout from having, being too giving to others. And so we need to make sure that we're also filling our cup and making sure that we're taking care of ourselves. And so my grief in the workplace program comes in 3 parts. It comes with teaching people about grief through the grief recovery method, and then teaching them some compassion skills so that they're understanding how to be fully present for their coworker, for their employee that are coming back into the workplace. And then coming up and designing together with the leadership and the HR team with a return to work program that encompasses all of that. Because you can train up on all of these things, but it's really the human interaction and what happens, right? When you're alone with your coworker, and what do you do about that? So you've got the skills, you've got the tools that you can pull out of your toolkit, but you still have to have the parameters in place to be able to still run your organization, but run it from a different perspective, right? With being there for that employee. So for example, I worked with one company, a really small one, so they were able to be flexible in some ways, but not as flexible as bigger organizations. And I say flexible in some ways because they were a family company, and so they could afford to like maybe let someone work in the back office, or make someone take off a little bit more because they didn't run a huge operation. And so it was first teaching them all about compassion and grief, and then what can you afford within your office, right? So does everybody in the office know each other's job, right? Are people cross-trained, right? And most of the time in small offices, they are. So I had to ask that question. And so majority of them were cross-trained. So I went, perfect. So there may be some moving parts, right? You need to play chess with some of your players within the office so that your grieving employee that's coming back doesn't have to be in the front lines, right? And you need to ask them first, what are they comfortable with? And be okay with whatever they say. Because some of them might say, no, I'm good. I want to face customers again. I miss that. Or some might say, I'm not ready yet. I'm still so fragile, and I feel like I'm going to cry. Like every moment I see someone, I'm going to cry, especially with someone I know that knew my partner, knew my husband. And so I just don't think I can do it. And so you need to be able to adapt and adjust, right? So we came up with a plan of what their operation can handle, and then some different options based on what their operation can handle. And then, the first thing is meeting with the employee, talking to them about where they're at, what is coming back to work look like for them. And then giving them an opportunity also to tell you they see themselves coming back into the workplace. Because if you just dictate, and that was one of the things that I had told leaders early on, don't dictate. Ask them, because who knows their job better but them? So they know what they can and can't handle. Sometimes they may not. So like, for example, with me, I was overwhelmed and I wasn't sure exactly what I could and couldn't handle. I knew for sure that I couldn't handle running training or leading meetings, facilitating meetings. I knew those 2 things I couldn't do, not right out of the gate. And so those things I was able to tell my boss, I can't do that yet. But then there was other things I'm like, oh, I'm not sure. Let me try. And so it's good to get the employee to tell you how ready are they to transition back to work, right? um, and there's going to be so many components. How long have they been out? Because if some are coming back right away, there's still a lot of work, right, that needs to be done. And the fact that I have worked with a few organizations with my program, what happened there was grief recovery was also available now to that grieving employee coming back. So they didn't necessarily take my program before they came back, and can't mandate it, right? They have to be ready for something like this. And so you can't say, well, you can't come back to work until you take the grief recovery method. We just can't do that. And so what I did was we incorporated it into the program. So like, for example, a bigger organization was very generous and said, we're going to pay for every single grieving person that wants to avail of your program. We're going to pay for them 100% to go through your program. And even I had to go, are you sure? Are you sure you don't want them to have some sort of personal investment and pay part of it? And they said the personal investment for them is just coming back to work and, being fully present with us when they're ready.
Wow.
Right?
So
And
they really value their employees.
they really value their employees. And I tell you, I've worked with many of their employees over the course of, I think I've worked with this company. They were my first company ever to work with. And my program was still actually being designed. They were kind of like my pilot, just kind of going through what I needed to do to help organizations. And I've worked with many of their employees over the last 3 years.
And what are the benefits? What are the benefits of leadership and the HR department really providing a way for, well, first of all, you work with the leadership directly,
right,
and they get the education on what they can do for their employees. But what are the long-term effects of the employees being able to do grief recovery work? How does that impact them in the workplace?
Trust. One of the biggest values and the biggest return of investment for these organizations is trust. Because now they've gained trust from not just that employee who's returning to work, but the rest of the employees, the coworkers. Because what you did now here is you have developed a culture that shows compassion and is building upon trust and trust and more trust. Because now you have armored all of your employees to now have the tools to help their one employee that they didn't know how to help before when they come back to work. Now you don't have to walk on eggshells around your grieving coworker, because now you've got the skills and you know that it's okay. It's okay if they're crying. It's okay if this is how they feel. It's okay if I'm going to be sad with them, because I knew their mom, and I'm sad. I miss her too. So to be able to acknowledge those feelings. But you've built trust now within the organization, and your employee who's coming back now knows that you truly and genuinely care for them. So that builds their trust for you as an organization. And then that trust is going to translate to amazing performance and commitment and loyalty to your company, because of what you now just built in your culture. Because now there's compassion, now there's understanding grief at a whole new level, now there is ownership and responsibility on everybody's part, right? It's like you're my employee, and I am going to hold you accountable and responsible to your job. But first, I want to know how you're doing. I want to know how I can help and support you, right? And it's infectious, right? Just like negative behaviors and negative programs and negative policies that come in, those things are infectious too. So imagine having that come into your organization, even if your organization lacked it on all levels. As soon as you incorporate this in there, you change mindsets, you change hearts, right? You change behaviors. It's amazing. It's amazing what this program can do for organizations, both big and small. once they understand that grief is very present in their workplace and what they can do to help cultivate an environment of compassion and safety and trust.